This is how Jin Ping Mei is read chapter 14 in the embroidery version. Hua Zixu died due to anger, and Li Ping'er went to the meeting to welcome an adulterer. 1. Nothing without a story. The death of Hua Zixu. Last time, Simon King finally hooked up with Li Ping'er, fulfilling their wish for many days. However, as a story, if this is not the end, then it must continue to develop. What should the author write? A new thing must be introduced called a new stimulus in professional terms. This new thing is usually in the opposite direction to the original thing. For example, if a person wants to succeed, then the new thing is a resistance. Here do people want to have an affair? Then the new thing is to have the affair discovered. When the text previously dealt with Pan Jinlian and Simon King's affair, it was written in a way that it was discovered and exposed by a third party. But this did not work for Li Ping'er. Although Pan Jinlian also broke through at the end of the last chapter, there was no need to expose her. So the author paused here and prepared to introduce a new thing from the side. Only in this way can Li Ping'er be written on a broader stage. Because the author ultimately wants to write her and Pan Jinlian into Simon's garden together. The new thing introduced by the author is that something happened to the Hua family. It was a winter day after the Double Ninth Festival. Simon King hurriedly returned home from the brothel because several brothers of Hua Zixu went to Tokyo to file a complaint and demanded a share of the inheritance of the old eunuch Hua Zixu. According to Li Ping'er, even Hua Zixu didn't know the amount and content of this inheritance, let alone the other brothers of the Hua family. However, unfounded facts can muddy the waters. The Kaifeng governor actually accepted the case and went straight to Qing County to pursue Hua Zixu across provinces. Regarding this matter, Simon King was frightened for a while. Do you still remember Uncle Zhang from Meng Yulu's late husband's family? If he had connections with the Hua brothers, was Meng Yulu's box of treasure reliable? Fortunately, Zhangxi is neither Hua Die nor Wu Song. However, it is difficult for Li Ping'er because Qing County is only the hometown of eunuch Hua, and she is not familiar with her place of birth. The only way she can find is this new lover Simon King. Li Ping'er, her clothes were disheveled. Her face was slovenly made up. Her face was so frightened that the wax residue was also yellow. She knelt down to Simon King and begged again and cried out what happened. If you were Simon King, what would you do? At first I thought, are you scared to death? Secondly, I thought, this is an interprovincial pursuit. I am incapable of doing this, and I really can't help. The third level of thinking is, but if someone has an affair with you, you have to do it through fire and water, right? On the fourth level, I thought, what are you doing? It was her husband who was captured. As long as I don't take action, then, don't worry, our Uncle Simon is by no means the kind of person who is unloyal. At this juncture, he didn't think so much at all. He readily agreed to go to Tokyo to find favors for Hua Zixu. Of course, he also took away Li Ping'er's 3,000 love money. Things went very smoothly. The fire was so intense that the pig's head was rotten. The money was spent on business, and Hua Zixu was sent home without a single beating. At this time, Simon King was full of joy. Why was he so happy? It's just that the lover's affairs have been settled and the lover's husband has returned home. As for the inconvenience for him to have an affair over the wall in the future, he really doesn't seem to think much about it. Therefore, relatively speaking, Li Ping'er is more proactive and more vicious. Let's take a look at her inner world. When Simon King pointed out that 3,000 people were too much love, he was really sincere and had no intention of taking advantage of others' danger to collect discounts. But this is what Li Ping'er thought. Many senior officials took them away. Behind the slave bed there were 4 boxes of python robes, jade belts, and ribbon rings on top of hats. They were all valuable treasures. I also asked the senior officials to collect them for me and put them with the senior officials. I will get it when I need it. At this moment, if I don't think of a way to defend myself, if I believe him, I won't be able to live a good life in the future. It can be said that after this battle, Li Ping'er lost her patience with Hua Zixu. She transferred all her valuable treasures to her lover's house. She wanted to firmly hold on to the money in her own way. The lawsuit is over and Hua Zixu is back. Originally, according to the outcome of the favor, the wealth distributed to the Hua family brothers, was just a drop in the bucket for Hua Zixu and Li Ping'er. Next, we should live a good life as usual, visiting prostitutes when they should, and climbing over the wall when they should. However, Simon King just used his sexual desire to have an affair, and Li Ping'er completely used his reason to have an affair. I asked Simon King to discuss it. I asked Simon King to buy this house with a few taels of silver. Tomorrow, I will soon be yours too. Because the conclusion of the lawsuit is that all the properties of Hua Zixu will be appraised first, and then sold, and the cash proceeds will be divided equally among the 4 brothers. So Li Ping'er suggested that Simon King buy the house where he currently lives. At this time, she was no longer willing to live here as Hua Erniang. I will be yours soon. She had already begun to dream of becoming the 6th Niang of the Simon family. But what should I do with Hua Zixu? He is still alive. We can't imagine that if Hua Zixu hadn't gotten sick, Li Ping'er would have found some arsenic to poison him in the future when he was desperate. But later Li Ping'er's treatment of Hua Zixu seemed to be no less cruel than arson. When Hua Zixu came back from the lawsuit and saw that all the gold, silver and jewelry at home were gone, he wanted to ask Simon King if he had any favors and could use the leftover money to buy a house. In this regard, Simon King was willing to send back a few hundred taels of silver to rescue him. After all, they were brothers. But Li Ping'er, who said a wife is like clothes, scolded Hua Zixu until he was bloody, and secretly told Simon King don't give him money, don't see him. No matter how dandy or stupid Hua Zixu is, he has already figured it out by this time. He was so angry that he just stumbled, so he got this heavy breath. And fortunately contracted another typhoid fever and fell to sleep when I was in bed. I never got up. In the beginning, I even invited the imperial doctor to see me, but later I was afraid of spending money, so I just stayed with him. After 20 days of treatment, he finally succumbed to anger and died. It is really sad to think that the rich and wealthy playboy in King County actually died of fear of using money. We sympathized with Hua Zixu's death and were shocked by Li Ping'er's cruelty. However, everything in this world is nothing more than human relationships. We are going to fight 50 times each and say something fair. At this point, the author of Jin Ping Mei couldn't help but add a comment. The virtues are in harmony with each other. The fate is congenial. The husband sings, and the wife follows, and the concubine can be free of blame. If it is like a flower, it is empty and desolate, and it isn't disciplined, but it wants to be content. How can you get what you want without being angry with him? This means that because Hua Zixu himself lived a messy life, Li Ping'er started to have different intentions. However, who should blame Hua Zixu for his messy life? Blame him for his poor tutoring. That's the strange old eunuch. Let's recall Li Ping'er's life experience. When the eunuch went to Guangnan, he also took him to Guangnan and lived there for more than half a year. Unfortunately, Eunuch Hua was ill and retired at home, because he was from King County and lived in this county. Now Hua the eunuch is dead, and more than a penny is in Zix's hands. Later, one time in bed, Simon King asked Li Ping'er if he also played the flute with Hua Zixu. Li Ping'er's answer was, I don't want to get involved with him for free. Besides, when my husband is here, I'm in another room with him, sleep. To sum up the two passages, it means that Eunuch Hua was marrying a wife for Hua Zixu. But actually he was marrying a wife for himself. Li Ping'er even suffered from hemorrhage, which eventually killed her. Therefore, after the death of the eunuch, all the inheritance fell into Li Ping'er's hands. Just imagine, how did the young Hua Zixu feel in her heart at that time? So he has developed the bad habit of visiting prostitutes and sleeping around with him. Can you completely blame him? Hua Zixu was ruined in this way. Otherwise, when the old eunuch died, wouldn't he be able to live with his head held high like a man? Didn't Li Ping'er tacitly approve of him using Yingxun and Shuchun? This shows how much Li Ping'er looks forward to him growing into a man like Simon King. It was precisely because Hua Zixu had always been such a Hua Zixu that Li Ping'er had no choice but to be ruthless and hold on to the money in her hand. Money is important to everyone. Pan Jinlian was sold back and forth precisely because she was poor. And it was precisely because Li Ping'er brought the treasure of Daming Mansion that she met the Hua family on her way to escape to seek relatives. Her past experiences convinced her that the only thing that could control her destiny was money. So she would put her money with Simon King, in the hands of a man she could trust, instead of squandering it in vain. If you trust him, you won't be able to live a good life in the future. Perhaps it was these morbid life circumstances that created the morbid life stories that followed. Just as the author showed a certain degree of sympathy when describing Pan Jinlian's crimes, the author did not completely deny Li Ping'er. To go further, Li Ping'er's pain lies in not being able to find a better way out of life. Just like Pan Jinlian, who felt that her life was gloomy when facing Wu Daling, Li Ping'er's life was the same one. Facing a house full of wealth, and a husband who spent all his time living and drinking. It's gray. She has no way not to be attached to a man. Or in other words, like Pan Jinlian, she is always looking forward to a man who truly treats her and treats her as a woman. This cannot but be said to be sad and deplorable. After covering up, we will sympathize with the innocent dead, and also sympathize with the fear, helplessness, and sadness deep in the sinful hearts of women. This is similar to the power of religion, which is the forgiveness and compassion of God and Buddha for people's mistakes and suffering. Perhaps this is what the author of Jin Ping Mei wanted to say in the text, but did not say it. 2. Noisy things have stories. Li Ping'er's hairpin. One day in December, Hua Zixu died. Like Pan Jinlian, Li Ping'er was not idle at all after her husband died, and took her 2 girls to travel with the whole family with her lover Simon King. Before May 7th, Li Ping'er finally stepped onto the threshold of Simon's house. The reason for her visit was that it was Pan Jinlian's birthday, on the 9th day of the first lunar month. What's the first thing you do when you walk in after entering 3rd, Icoded Fordimtos, Yunyang, and the uninvited legendarium? Then Pan Jinlian Gadens, is the swooning, Checo taught again, after given Jin Foreign Tan, that Wovang counted. What does for heads mean? Evan I Focontunders, the following Koto to Panjin Lion Formt. It is conceivable for tough, or to be precise, they wear a concubant less. It's sad, isn't this a knife I and air? Is Katsahu afalafically a kikik? She is treating a coffin swimo as o mo 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 mo. Blair I snoother of Feffington as mended literate inference. However, Wutu any ended in tefistras for heads, at least though a tortold still ills, is slightest. What wash I think? The next step is Todin Tenon. There I snootherpa bintance. Just going back Cantarif. Anna Pusida Penadesham. Ever I onezident tui antis Mrs. Anizes. Sethia sketchin oracol. When Panjanli anagasham. Why you any ang descrivera ter with the character golden longavi on her head. The Giefers person tor efficiency. And then why any avidrits, but mangula wastortef, athis dime. Wu yu niang gaskali, niang. Hinner de juan saphiristis. They single quotes ray great. Tomorrow I will each be worthy of wearing a pair. Double quotes the next dialogue seems to be calm. Liping ursate, since Ethiel deslitsti, is still have efflers. Tomorrow, at gladi will give interim. Visur broru gustum. How can such a modulden? Wu Yunyang said, I am teasing Du Erniang for playing tricks. There are many of my sisters, so there are these to send each other too. Can you see the waves and undercurrents underneath? Question 1. Li Ping'er has never met Pan Jinlian before. Why did she give Pan Jinlian a hairpin? Chinese people don't like to open gifts on the spot. Question 2. Hanako's corpse is still cold. So why is Li Ping'er anxious to celebrate her birthday? What should she do with her treasures? Wu Yunyang could tell at a glance that the hairpin had a special shape, or that it was something from Li Ping'er's palace. She was just joking casually, but she didn't expect to get it right. Since Li Ping'er has never met Pan Jinlian, why did he just give her a gift? Wu Yunyang was naturally able to think of gardens, and then cleverly connected the two issues. When Hua Zixu was captured, Simon King went home and told Wu Yunyang about the matter. Wu Yunyang only said that she should have less contact with them, and had no sympathy for the Hua family. Hua Erniang never lacked etiquette. But waiting for Li Ping when her son brought 3,000 taels to Simon King to intercede and sa ID that he would transfer other valuables to Simon's house for storage. Wu Yunyang, who had always had no idea, not only was not afraid of getting into trouble, but immediately came up with a clever plan. If the things in the box are stolen from the gate, come, tell the neighbors on both sides not to look conspicuous. You have to break the wall at night to be more secretive. So, at night when the moon comes up, Li Ping'er, together with Yingxin and Shuchun, place tables and stools, and put the boxes and cabinets against the wall. On Simon King's side, there are only Yunyang, Jinlian, and Chun Mai, which are connected with ladders. On the top of the wall they laid out felt strips and sent them one by one, and sent them all to Yunyang's room. The word endure means light-footedness. The wall is lined with felt strips means disappearing, and the word stop means no one is aware of it. Not to mention that Meng Yulu doesn't know. Not even Yu Xiao and Xiao Yu know. From Wu Yunyang's point of view, Li Ping'er is willing to send the treasure over, and she has no reason to refuse it. But this deposit is not an ordinary deposit. Is there an account? Do you have a receipt? Is there any third-party witness? When Hua Zixu was in prison, didn't Wu Yunyang prevent Simon King from buying the Hua family's house? This would indirectly kill Hua Zixu. When Hua Zixu is released, Li Ping'er will not come to ask for the treasure, although she still has a chance to get it back. Now that Hua Zixu is dead, what ability does Li Ping'er have to get the treasure back? There is no doubt that Li Ping'er's only last option is to marry into Simon's family. Why did Li Ping'er store his treasure at Simon's house instead of somewhere else? Since treasure can come over the wall, why can't Simon King go over the wall? Why did Li Ping'er's precious and special hairpin end up on Pan Jinlian's head? Isn't it related to the wall, the garden, and Simon King? The book does not say what Wu Yunyang was thinking, but when Wu Yunyang asked Li Ping'er about her hairpin gently and deftly, we can probably guess the incomparable emotions in her heart. However, the careless and stupid Li Ping'er fell into the trap and answered happily, I have plenty of these at home. If you like them, I will send you a pair tomorrow. The next morning, Li Ping'er gave Wu Yunyang and 4 other people a pair of hairpins each. Hearing that Chun Mai was used by Simon King Shu, he gave her a pair of golden 3 things. She was dedicated to it. You can buy people's hearts, but people's hearts are not easy to buy. In the end, these hairpins of hers were not only in vain, but even had the opposite effect. Or ask, why is Li Ping'er not in a hurry to get her treasure back? Why are you so anxious to visit and give gifts to your wives and concubines so generously? Because the only way she wanted to get it back was to marry into the Simon family, so she could only let others bully her at the wine table. She would drink and drink without hesitation. She could only give favors and make friends, and she could only see Wu Yunyang respectfully. Count out 4 times, perhaps Li Ping'er is just focused on directing her own happiness, and doesn't care whether others see through her thoughts, because she has no way out at all. Wu Yunyang has seen the clues. The question now is, in this seemingly peaceful banquet, do the other women know the cause and effect? In fact, Wu Yunyang only had part of the information, and what she didn't know was held by Pan Jinlian. Pan Jinlian was the first witness to the affair in the garden, so of course she would not be surprised by the intimate connotations. However, the hairpin was extremely attractive to her who was impoverished. The very wonderful palace thing was enough to make her happy on her birthday, dressed to show off at the banquet. Isn't there just one more rich and beautiful woman? Didn't she come here like this? But she never thought that Huai Erniang, who had such a high profile and a good life, would actually covet to marry into Simon's family and become a concubine. What about Meng Yulu? In storybook, Meng Yulu was the first to discover Pan Jinlian's hairpin. In the portrait book, this detail was removed, so Meng Yulu's attitude can only be judged from her dialogue. When Wu Yunyang asked Li Ping'er why she didn't come to see Simon's house, Meng Yulu said, "It's not because I am celebrating my birthday with my 6th sister that I am not here today." When Li Ping'er promised to visit her frequently in the future, Meng Yulu was the first to suggest, "Second mother, I will spend the night with my sister today and not go home." After several rounds of leaving and persuading to stay, Lao Fang urged Li Ping'er to ask if he wanted to go back. Meng Yulu said harshly, "Second mother is very clinging to the past, and we all have nothing to do with it. Go up. If I don't send the sedan chair now, I'll have to keep my second mother behind until his father comes back." In Meng Yulu's view, When Hua Zixu was alive, Li Pinger, as a neighbor's family member, never came to the house. As soon as Hua Zixu died, Li Pinger rushed to the house to celebrate his birthday. She also saw the four heads. Obviously, she could more or less guess what Li Pinger was thinking. Pan Jinlian knew all about Li Pinger's situation. Wu Yunyang knew more or less what Li Pinger was thinking. Even Meng Yulu, who was outside the situation, was a little more sensitive. However, these thoughts and suspicions were carried out quietly at the seemingly peaceful and joyful banquet. Oh, this is how Jin Ping Mei tells stories and writes about life. Similar to our everyday life, when his father comes, he will inevitably keep his second mother. It was Meng Yulu's sharp words that completely made Li Pinger stay. When Li Pinger saw Pan Jinlian for the first time and couldn't help but say, "Is this Wu Niang?" Zhang Zhubo keenly criticized it and said, "It shows the long-lasting friendship between gods." Indeed, when it comes to murdering their husbands, they are really on par with each other, and they can be considered divine friends. The first night Li Pinger slept at Simon's house was in Pan Jinlian's room, with whom she had been a close friend for a long time. After dressing up this morning, Pan Jinlian took her to the garden. This was the first time Li Pinger walked into the garden, and the first time she looked over the wall from the garden, the former Hua family house. Maybe the shadow of Simon King climbing over the wall at night would appear in her mind, and the husband who was drunk or clinically dying would appear in her mind. Or maybe it was too late for her to have mixed feelings, so she secretly memorized the layout of the garden, hoping that Simon King hurry up and decorate, hurry up and marry into Simon's family, hurry up and form the garden beauty gang with Pan Jinlian, hurry up and get back the huge treasures that originally belonged to her, but are now hidden under Wu Yunyang's bed.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.